an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering What We Do in the Shadows, Season 4, Episode 9, Freddie. In this episode, I can't believe where this episode goes. I was ready to fucking kill Nandor. And good for you, Guillermo. He finally drew a line in the sand. Well, kind of. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. Oh my God, y'all. This is a wild one. I can't believe how, pressed I was at the way things fucking go. It made me so angry. I was truly, in every direction, getting so pissed on Guillermo's behalf that I don't feel like I'm over it. I feel like I'm starting this episode off with bad attitude because of it. But I'm going to talk about his whole thing after I've talked about what's going on with Nadja, because let's just get that out of the way, since Guillermo's thing is honestly way, way more interesting. So we start the episode off in the cold open before the credits with Nadja talking about how the club is doing super well. It's the destination right now in the tri-state area for vampires. And she's talking about how she is the queen there and she's really enjoying that role of being the powerful hostess who is admired but also gets to tell everybody what to do. And as she is doing this, we get this really weird bit. So she has celebrities visiting, apparently, who do not realize that any of these people are vampires. I think they think it's just a cute gimmick for the type of club. And everybody here is in costume, I guess. And at this table, looking like such normies, we've got Sofia Coppola in just a white button-down shirt and a ponytail. We've got Jim Jarmusch, a director. I know I've seen things that he has done, but don't put a gun to my head. And she is swanning over to them, acting extremely familiar in a way that is I think she thinks is chummy, but comes across as just really crass. She says, "I want to show the camera my bling ring." Oh God. And Jarmusch says, "Colin really is performing tonight, right? We're very excited. We've been hearing about him for weeks." And she assures him that's happening. But then we get the lead singer of Phoenix, Thomas Mars. And he's like, "We have heard Colin is a complete phenomenon." Then she says something in French. I think she just says he has a certain je ne sais quoi, and he just replies in French. Oh my God. She is not in her element here. So this is when Sophia says, looking at the menu here, what is the celebrity special? And is it really $5,000? And Nadja's like, "Oh, the celebrity special. Is that something that you would be interested in?" And Jim says, "No, I don't make that kind of money, although these two are good to go with it." So Nadja says, "Do I have any volunteers for the celebrity special?" And a couple of the people, she chooses this pair. Everybody that she hears her immediately puts their hand in the air. They are super excited, which I've got to say would be the first thing to make me go, you know what? Never mind. it's not even about the particular crowd they're surrounded by. If I am ordering something and I don't know what it actually is, and it suddenly becomes apparent to me that it involves crowd participation, I'm just going to tap out. No, thank you. I would rather not. I don't want to involve any other people in my shit when I'm not fully aware of what the fuck is about to happen. So Nadja brings over a couple of white napkins and sort of drapes them like they're about to eat, but then just lets loose her vampires who eat both of these people right in front of Jim, who thinks that this is all special effects, that it's like him being pranked, basically. And he expresses multiple times how incredibly real this all looks. And like at one point, she just yanks Sofia Coppola's head off her body and begins to toss it around the crowd. And he is just like, God, this is amazing. I could never afford a gag like this. And for the rest of it, he is looking for Sofia, calling her, not sure why she's like not answering his calls or calling him back. And here's my question, guys. How long can they keep doing this? Because, you know, I've been perfectly willing to accept that we have our randos who come by after going, you know, meeting somebody in the park, being lured there by Guillermo, whatever, and they disappear and nobody figures out that this is where they went because they were mesmerized and there was nobody aware they were heading even in this direction. But that's regular nobodies. Now we're talking about extremely high profile kills. And I don't know what we're getting in terms of follow-up to this particular storyline. Like, we're in the penultimate episode. Next episode's the final episode of the season. And it seems like we may be setting things up for our friends to be under investigation of some kind. And it's the sort of thing that, like, it's really got a lot of possibilities, but I cannot decide how I would want this to be played, even if it were to happen. Like, a part of me hesitates to even talk about how I would like this to be played because I am so certain the show isn't going in this direction at all. But then there's a part of me that's sort of like feeling like they can't just be having them rip celebrities apart and there's no follow-up at all. I mean, it's like a fun gag, but this show doesn't so entirely lack continuity that I think they would really handle it that way. I don't think. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But I just truly keep wondering how much longer they can go on like this and not have people put two and two together. Like, even if they had killed all of the celebrities at the table here, that would be one thing. You know, we've got our whole, you know, everybody who was coming here. I'm assuming they probably have assistants and stuff that they would tell, but let's suspend our disbelief and say that nobody knew they were coming here except each other. There was not the slightest way to trace them. We could just be like, all right, well, you kill all the witnesses and that's all we've got. But it's very specifically that one dude is left alive. And I have to assume that there's going to be a storyline that develops about how they are under investigation somehow, because there are so many celebrities that have gone to the club and never come back again. Now, when I theorize about how this would go, and forgive me, because if it turns out we're not doing anything of the kind, then people listening who have watched ahead are going to get extremely tired of my conjectures on this. And I'm once again, I'm really sorry, because I don't want to bore you if you are like fully aware. That's not how any of this is going. I don't care what you have to say about it. Like, I sympathize, but I can't help that. That's part of the show, is like people going off in a certain direction, guessing about something that ultimately winds up having no relevance, you know? So this is just me going, okay, if I were going to do this, how would it go? And, you know, it would be very easy to be like, all right, so it's obviously a vampire themed club. The cops are going to be like, oh my God, vampires are real. But they're definitely not going to do that. So they have to think something else is going on. Now, are they going to think it's like human trafficking? Why would they do that to celebrities? Are they going to think it's a hostage situation? Is Jim going to simply not be believed? That would be a real weird way to play it. Have him be like, I have my suspicions, but no, like, I sound crazy and nobody is going to listen to me say that I sat and watched Sofia Coppola's head be ripped off of her body. Like, that's just not, nobody's going to hear that. So they're just, and what do they do? If they came in and they started searching for something, unless they're using like luminol, I don't know how much is still on the present, what is the word I'm looking for? Premises. That's the one. Jesus Christ. Because the wraiths are the ones that are handling cleanup and everything, and they are extremely efficient. I don't know what happens to the bodies afterwards. Like, I have to assume there is some magical way that they handle that, but I probably shouldn't assume that. So anyway, they're all very excited for this performance before the head ripping part. And it cuts right from this bloodbath to Nadja getting a little, hey, come over here from Evil Mabel. And we find out that Laszlo, who is representing Colin Robinson in this scenario, has decided that Colin needs a contract with better terms. He wants some money because basically his argument is that it's solely due to Colin Robinson that Nadja's club is doing so well. And it's funny because Nadja decides to call his bluff on this, but we heard Nadja in the intro talking about that very thing. Basically, Colin is her cash cow, but because she doesn't want to pay anybody anything for their work, she would rather let Laszlo walk out the door and then just try at the last second to scramble and fill Colin Robinson's shoes, which is so... I will tell you what, kids, I have like really sort of lost hold of the Nadja is the more level-headed one in the crew at this point. This nightclub situation has really completely thrown the blindfold off. The scales have fallen from my eyes, and I am looking at her like, bitch, what are you doing? Like, every decision she makes is made for the most stupid, spiteful reasons. And she will have literally been on camera saying the exact same thing. But because she doesn't want to just like spend any money on anything, she's so cheap. That's the part that I keep being kind of surprised by, is like, she is hoarding all of this money and is obviously power hungry in this respect, which I do like. This holds up, especially in light of her and Nandor both being given like joint positions on the Vampiric Council, but then her being the only one who really took her responsibility seriously or seemed to really like care about the title more than just the prestige of the title alone. So this completely lines up. But it's really funny how somebody can be like simultaneously riding the high of what their privileges are in relationship to an institution and then let that institution suffer. Like, she is enjoying being the queen of this place so much, and then lets go of the reins entirely. And basically the whole edifice just like completely collapses by the end of this episode. And, you know, I knew we were going to have to head in this direction eventually, because one thing that our vamps do not do is succeed. They just don't win. It never works. Like, the only one who ever comes close is Laszlo. And even he then decides to put on a fucking cursed hat. So, you know. So I knew that it was going to have to crash and burn. But if you had asked me at the beginning of the season for like what I thought might specifically happen to cause that, I think that I would have guessed something happened like that Nadja didn't have any control over. Maybe that she like trusted somebody, or one of the guys did something stupid, or Colin Robinson did something weird. I don't think, or Evil Mabel decided suddenly like, I don't want to be invested in this at all, and maybe sabotaged her, or just quit, and the whole thing, you know, kind of collapsed because she had been managing a lot of it. I don't think I ever would have guessed that Nadja's management would be so incompetent that she would be the cause of the closure of her own club. And I don't know why. I just gave her a lot more credit in terms of like her abilities and her commitment to this and her understanding of what's like fair and caring about that part of it at all. And I don't know if the difference would be like when she's dealing with the Wraiths and she's dealing with Colin Robinson, they're neither of them vampires. So I don't know if Colin Robinson were a vampire performer, would she feel differently? Like, I know that she has more respect for other vampires than she does for any other like species, I guess. But I don't know if that would really change anything. I think that she is just grasping, because like, you know, if anybody should be able to get her to get past that, it would be her husband that she loves, Laszlo, on behalf of Colin Robinson. And it seems like, if anything, the fact that it's Laszlo makes it worse, you know? So yeah, anyway, this whole thing, like, she winds up, her and Evil Mabel have to pull something together at the last second once she decides that she's going to dig her heels in and not pay Colin. So she goes and finds a really bizarre performance. It's an erotic, like, carnival. I can't remember the word they use for it. But it's like a bunch of circus performers, but they basically do like sex shows in the midst of their gymnastics and trapeze, you know, all of that. The whole thing is really goofy looking. There's all of these like fake posters of the act from like the 20s, it looked like. And she is extremely excited because they're hard to get, but she managed to book them for that evening. And when she said that, I was like, how hard to get can they be if you manage to like get them in for that very night? But it turns out that she wasn't aware. They said only one of them was available. And it is just the clown who can suck himself off. You guys, this is so the actor who plays this dude, I know I have seen in a million things. He's one of those faces that you point and go, oh, it's that guy. He comes onto the stage and he like, you know, does a little bit. He's dressed in like the kind of clown clothing that Pennywise would be in, like very shabby, washed out coloring, like he's already in sepia tone. And the bit he does is really, it feels like half-hearted. And then he gets on the ground and rolls his hips up over his face. And it cuts to the audience watching him and like cheering him on. And then he sits up and thanks them all for like the honor of sucking himself off for them, I think is the way he phrases it. And everybody begins to boo because I think it lasted about a minute and a half. And Nadja had not only fully expected the entire crew to be here, but then when it's just him, figured that he at least could put on a performance for a little while. And as he gets off the stage, he's actually saying under his breath that he's like never lasted that long before. Oh man, I can't imagine giving myself head. Like, I just don't feel like that would work out. I am sure it would if like, you know, but I just can't really imagine the combo of doing it and feeling it. I just, I'm not, I just don't like it. I don't like it. So anyway, this is a fucking wash. And as this is going on, Nadja is getting more and more slovenly, is the word I want to use. Evil Mabel is talking to the camera at one point, and she says that Nadja has been drinking a lot of liquor blood, and she's starting to get worried about her. And I had forgotten about the fact that when vamps drink, drunk people, they can get drunk or they can also get stoned. How did I forget this? I mean, you know, but Nadja is like literally falling down in a couple of scenes and tripping and just extremely, her hair is unkempt. Her makeup is all over her face. Or if she's just been drinking somebody, she'll just have blood smeared around her mouth and she won't have like cleaned up at all. And slurring her words really badly, sliding down in her chair like she's about to just like lay on the ground. And I can't decide by the end of this whether she's like on her way to cleaning up that behavior or if that's going to be a part of the down. Like, you know, the club is closing. I'm assuming maybe it's not as bad a failure as it looked like, but by the end of this episode, it really seems like the club is fucking shot. Is she going to just like bounce back from it? You know, be getting drunk all the time or what? So eventually she comes up with the idea to host a audition for other child performers. And you guys, there's a time like right after that clown gets off the stage that she's, no, I'm going to perform. And she starts singing about how there's a very large bird carrying one of her brothers away. I really want to know if she comes up with this shit or if it's like the writers or what. I like to think it's ad-libbed, but it's very good. These performers, there's a kid who comes up and sings and she's like hugely drunk throughout this whole thing. So one of them comes up and sings and is flat. So she says he's not very good. I will grant him that. There's another kid that comes up and starts to just like spell. And she says that why isn't he like in a locker somewhere? His bullies are not doing a very good job. Just like, you know, one person after another that she's just waving off stage with a real sense of like, I'm pissed that I even had to be here for any of this, you know? And I really love this conceit of these creepy children and that the creepiness is what they like. The vampires, I mean. I just really, this is such a fun bit that there's a lot more we could do with it. And I'm interested to see if we do, if the, you know, club stays open. I'm trying to see who else. Okay, so we're going to back up a little bit and go to Laszlo and Colin Robinson, because as she's doing this, they are heading upstate to some other clubs that are like less popular, but that at least will like pay him to be there. And we go to the bus that they're riding, and Colin is singing on the bus, and he is so incredibly awkward. You guys, I really can't emphasize enough how much I hate people singing. Like, I just, you know, not always, not always, but this moment where he's just standing there, it's like a nightmare to me. The only thing that would make this bearable is knowing I would have my headphones with me and I could just pretend I didn't hear him. And this is like people who get on the subway and they're busking by singing. Some people can be really good and they'll surprise you and you're like, you know what? You are getting some money from me. But sometimes it's just like, oh, stop looking at me. Oh my God. They're looking at me while they're singing. This is so awkward. And Laszlo starts like handing a hat around to collect the like donations of people because he's calling them freeloaders for listening to Colin singing when they're not paying for it. Oh, I forgot that there was like this tap dancing girl. Can you imagine being one of the kids cast to be here? Like, I'm going to do a talent, but the whole point is that I'm not good at the talent, or that I'm doing the talent and being ignored. I mean, I'm sure it's still amazing to be cast. Don't get me wrong. Like, but it just feels like what a weird role to play as a child, and like kind of get psyched about the fact that you're going to be the joke in the scene, you know? And this is when Nadja gets up on the stage and tries to like be like, this is how it's done, to the little girl, and takes her like cane away that she was using as a prop, and then promptly falls backward into the drums. So all of this culminates in her like the attempt that Laszlo makes to get this Colin Robinson in other bars thing off the ground gets stymied by Colin going through puberty really suddenly. And when I say go through puberty, I thought he was going to stay a teen. He does not. I mean, he is a teen. I think he's meant to be a teen. But he walks in at one point and he's got no shirt on. And I know, like, to a degree, we're doing what we can do, but they've had him on a child's body, and I don't know why they are, like, pretending he's a teen when he's definitely in the body of, like, a middle-aged man. Anyway, he walks in with, like, this Justin Bieber-esque side bang haircut, and he has really bad skin, and there's clearly, like, acne cream all over his face in a variety of places. And he is like, his voice starts cracking before he goes on stage, and Laszlo is trying to pretend it's not happening. And Colin is like in the costume that he has been wearing as he goes up on stage, and everybody is like, who the fuck is this? Because he's clearly too big for the clothes. And there are some people in the audience like yelling out that that's not Baby Colin. I think that that's the name they're using. They're calling him Baby Colin. But everybody can tell this dude is way too old. And he winds up like, just his singing voice has completely vanished. It's just non-existent. And the whole energy of the room turns on them, so that Colin flees, essentially, yelling about how everyone hates him. And Laszlo, who had thought like, oh yeah, we have a contract, we're all set, everything's good, they start getting cancellations. And I love that Colin here is saying, I'm not going to be singing anything unless it's the music of Papa Roach or Evanescence, which is just like, it's really like a, millennial teen music thing. Like, I feel like the writers are betraying themselves here. You might pick different bands if you were a little bit more in touch, but maybe that's also the point with Colin, is that he's like kind of not in touch with what's cool. I don't know. But they wind up coming home with their tail between their legs, basically. And Nadja has decided that she is going to forego the entertainment entirely. She does a thing like after the clown fucks up and leaves, she tries to do a blood fountain like from Blade, where they have the sprinklers built into the ceiling and the blood just comes down. Well, they don't work. And I kind of wondered if it was going to turn out to be like, the actual physics of trying to pump something thick and viscous like blood through that sort of plumbing system would be really difficult to pull off. But it just seems like something malfunctioned because one of the wraiths goes absolutely flying. And I did sort of think, even though it didn't come out where it's supposed to, you guys just wanted blood flying everywhere. And you did get that. So I think maybe you should just go with it. But nobody is impressed. They want the coolness factor. And a big malfunctioning thing is not cool. So when we see Nadja next, she is alone at the bar. She says, it's clear to me now that without baby Colin as its main attraction, this club cannot survive. It was the center of the vampire universe, but now it's just a big empty piece of shit. And there's all of these like shots of a couple of vamps clustered around a single table, looking kind of sad, the way that you do when you go to a club and there's almost nobody there. So Laszlo walks in and she's thinking, oh, perfect, we've got Colin back. But then she looks at him and doesn't recognize him. This is Colin. Hey. So she knows as well as anybody that this is just not going to work out. And that's the end of the episode for them. Now let's back up and talk about Guillermo. This is amazing, you guys. I got so excited for him and I was like, how is this going to go wrong? And it does. So he met somebody while he was in London named Freddie. And I was sort of thinking maybe there was going to be something real weird about Freddie. But no, it seems like he is just a genuinely adorable guy. I say that what winds up happening up with Freddie in the very end does point to there being something weird about him. But, nevertheless. So he's talking to the camera about how he's going to pick him up at the airport and it's going to be a whole thing. And then he gets a ring in the bell, goes down to answer the door, and Freddie is here early with a bouquet of flowers, and he had gotten his address off of a letter that he sent. And it's just a big surprise that he is here so early. I don't know what Guillermo would have done to prep, but I am guessing he would have at least told Nandor this guy is coming. Nandor passes by the door at this point and thinks that Freddie is here for his benefit, that this is basically takeout showing up at the door. But soon Nandor starts to realize that this is a friend, and Guillermo, who's trying to sort of make it that like he volunteers because of Nandor's developing dementia, that everything Nandor says sounds really crazy because of the fact that he isn't okay. He doesn't have all of his faculties. Which is actually not a bad cover, but then it makes what happens later with the other Freddie really, really weird, So he explains that this is my boyfriend, and Nandor takes a second and is just like, oh shit, okay. And I was really proud of Guillermo. Like, I don't know, there's a feeling of real like ownership in this scene of, yeah, this is like a new phase in my life I'm entering, and I'm going to like own it, and I'm pretty excited about it. And I felt really proud of him. Like, it was some growth. And it makes sense how incredibly fucked up it goes, because Nandor cannot stand when Guillermo is happy, is really the whole thing for me. So Freddie goes into the sitting room and he starts to point out all of these different things in the room and what they are likely worth. And it turns out that he works at an auction house, so he is able to price a lot of different things and what they might sell for, and, you know, be able to tell where they're from and everything. And so that's really fun. And then he starts just joking around about how, like, dusty the place is. Get a Roomba, except it might kill itself, which he makes that same joke again a bit later. And he kind of touches Nandor's arm, says something about how he's really grateful to meet him. If you ever need somebody to handle this stuff for you, give me a call. And he takes off, and Nandor is left behind with this sort of expression on his face. He has been charmed. He has been bewitched by this young man. So the next scene is him talking about how he can't sleep, that he can't stop thinking about Freddie. And he goes to the genie and he says, we have a horrible scene between him and Marwa, and talking about how much they're enjoying the respective chairs that they're sitting in. Oh boy. And he says, but marriage is sacred to me. I never once cheated on any of my 37 wives, and I'm not about to start now. Could I steal Freddie from Guillermo? Of course, but that would be cruel. And also, you know, sloppy seconds. If only. And so he goes to the djinn and says, I'm not sure if this is possible, but I wish for Marwa to be transformed into an exact copy of this person, Freddie. Appearance, personality, everything. And he says, why are you whispering? And Nandor says, because Marwa is a person that I love very much, and I don't want her to hear that I'm changing her into a completely different person. So, the way it works is when he goes back into the room, Freddie is there and sort of behaving like, I'm meeting you for the first time, but I am not at all surprised to be where I am. Which I thought was really interesting. Like, it's, I was sort of wondering if he was going to be under the impression that he was with Nandor already, you know, like, but they sort of start from scratch, and yet there's no evident surprise about his current situation or wondering how he got here or anything, which is fine. But it's just not like, if I were to guess how the scene would go, I would not have predicted this. So the next scene is the back-to-back traditional New York dates that they each take their respective Freddies on, because he made a list of things he wants to do in New York, and they both made the exact same identical list because they're the same person. So it totally works out. And they wind up doing all of the same things. Get a pretzel, go to the Met, the Whitney, Chelsea galleries. And that's what it says. So we get to see each of them do their thing, but one during the day and one at night. And both dates are going really, really well. They're having such a good time, and it made me so mad that I had to, like, not root for Nandor. If he had just been a fucking sane person, but then he wouldn't be who he is. And Guillermo is glowing. He's so happy. We just don't see him, like, genuinely happy in this way. And there is a moment where the two of them are coming out of a playing of Wicked, and behind them, Nandor and his Freddie are coming out, and they both have the same exact shirt on. And I was like trying to figure out exactly how that timing would work out. It really doesn't matter, but they're really close to each other, and they're both almost behaving like they just got out of the show. So I'm wondering if they were at the same show and they just missed each other, which would really be something. But we then jump to, this is so awful, you guys. So Guillermo had gone out for something. He comes home and he is looking for Freddie, and he hears, no, wait. He's not looking for him. Freddie's in the car waiting for him, and he has stopped home to get like some shoe insoles because they've been walking all day. And he hears laughter that sounds like Freddie. And he's like, what the hell? And he goes into the like parlor, and Nandor is on the floor in front of the fireplace surrounded by candles with Freddie draped over his naked torso. He's doing that thing where he's like naked except for his boots, the way that he does. And Nandor explains immediately, I thought that was going to be I can't believe you're cheating on me, Freddie scenario. But Guillermo was perfectly aware there's no way he got out of the car and got in here and got undressed fast enough. Like, this doesn't make sense. So Nandor explains, this is not your Freddie. This is my Freddie. And he explains, I had the djinn turn Marwa into a carbon copy. And Guillermo is not in time to stop his Freddie from coming into the room behind him. And each of the Freddies look at the other and begin to completely lose their shit. Understandably. I have been assuming these are twins in this scene. I don't know if it's like, you know, just computer generated, but there is I feel like there isn't the sort of look that you get sometimes where you do that computer generated thing. And we know that Colin's CGI has been pretty bad. So I like to think I would be able to tell. And it doesn't seem like that's what's happening here. But also, the two of them are not on camera together that often. It seems like we turn the camera from one to the other a fair amount. So maybe, you know, I don't know though. They're together here. I'm trying to see, because even twins, they can have their differences like in their face and stuff. So I'm sort of trying to see if there's any differences that I can detect. But they're playing, what are they doing? I think they're doing charades. And it turns out that Nandor like brainwashed them both into accepting that they're clones of each other and just not make a big deal out of it. The whole thing is so weird, you guys, because they're wearing the same shirts, because they have the same personality, and so they've made the same choices. And Guillermo is just so livid. He leaves the two of them in there, and he comes out to yell at Nandor. And I really didn't expect this to sink in at all, because Nandor is so dense, and he often doesn't let Guillermo finish speaking, or he seems to either deliberately misinterpret or accidentally misinterpret things that Guillermo says in such a way that it sidelines the whole conversation, and they never really get a satisfying back and forth to begin with. So I was really thinking this wasn't going to like land at all. But Guillermo does a really good job. Couldn't just let me have one thing of my own. Well, you have yours and I have mine. You took your wife, who you transformed into the perfect woman, and turned her into a carbon copy of my boyfriend. Doesn't that register with you as being messed up? To which Nandor says, stop saying things that I have done, which is really the summary of so many men's reactions to being held accountable to anything. That was like a mouthful. This is my last night with Freddie. This may seem like a huge game to you, but it's not to me. I really care about him. Do you understand that I've never in my whole life ever had a long-term boyfriend? Not once. And you find a way to make it about yourself. So thanks. And he walks away, and I was like, oh shit. Because as he's saying this, Nandor deflates. Like, you can see him really hearing what Guillermo is saying, you know? And he goes in and grabs Freddie's hand, but it's the wrong one because Nandor's taped a sign to Freddie's back. So he takes his own Freddie, and the two Freddies bid farewell to one another. And then we have the really sad, sweet goodbye as he's getting into the taxi to head back to England. And Guillermo, guys, I don't know why I thought once Freddie left that Nandor would like turn his Freddie back into Marwa, but that is not how it goes. He returns to the house where a carbon copy of his boyfriend is lounging with Nandor. And it's like the cruelest thing I can imagine. If anybody out there listening has been in a long distance relationship, can you imagine an identical copy of that person being around but fucking with somebody else right in front of your face? Like, that's a genuine, like, a nightmare scenario. Oh my God. So we have Guillermo like chatting with him on Skype or something on his iPad, probably FaceTiming. And the other Freddie hears him and comes in and is like chatting over his shoulder and sort of like takes over the entire conversation. It's really awful. He like takes the iPad right out of Guillermo's hands and walks away with it. And we have a moment with Guillermo like doing the talking heads thing, but he asks if they can cut because he's like starting to cry, and it's so upsetting, you guys. Nandor brings in this guy to Guillermo's room and is like, you can have him. And Guillermo says it's not the same. And there's something, the actor who plays Freddie, his body language in this scene is so good in terms of like feeling pity for Guillermo, but clearly not really being super willing to do this. Like, he's doing it out of pity, but there's nothing about it that's like what you want it to be. It's so, his face is so sad and just, oh my God, I hated it. So Guillermo is left there while Nandor goes and lets go of Freddie. He leaves Marwa in Freddie form, but just sends him out into the world as is, which is truly, I don't know how this would work, but he says like, you know, his whole goal was to like travel the world, so I'll let him have his adventures. And I'm just like, okay, did you give him money? Did he have a passport? Like, how does any of this work? Does not matter. I can't help it though. You guys know I have to say something, right? So we then get the saddest ending I have ever seen of almost any show, even though it didn't come as a total surprise. It still kind of did. Guillermo's in London. I decided to go and surprise Freddie because why not? You only live once. And I had all that money saved that I stole from the club. And he just says I stole. He doesn't even try and like mince it. He has no idea that I'm here. So, and then he hears laughter and says, oh, is that him? And the camera zooms in and we see him giving his clone a kiss. I love you, Freddie. I love you too, Freddie. Fancy a pint of bitter? Why not? You guys. Oh my God. And Guillermo's heartbreak, y'all. The look on his face is just devastating. His acting is too good. It's too good. I can't handle it. It's upsetting me. Look, I'm just going to put it out there. I am not a person who would fuck my clone. I'm not gay, first of all. So there's a problem right there. But even if I were, I have way too much self-consciousness. I couldn't, turn my brain off during any encounter, whether it be sexual or not. I would be so aware. This is how I act. This is how people see me. This is the way I present myself. This is the response I have to things. This is what it's like to be on the receiving end of that. I am already a self-conscious person, and it would make me even more so. It would be crippling. There's no way. So the kind of person that would be down for this, that's a really particular type of human being. And the fact that Guillermo doesn't know, so he's basically cheating on Guillermo with himself. That is another type of narcissism altogether. I mean, I can't. I feel so bad because him and Guillermo were hitting it off so well. And I want to say, it's no loss, Guillermo, because this guy is clearly psychotic if this is what he's up to. But at the same time, it's really easy to say that, and they just were charming together. I really liked them as a little couple. So, and especially after Guillermo, this being a new relationship and the way things went, basically, if he blamed Nandor for breaking up his relationship, I think he would not be out of line. Nandor creates a clone, and this happens. If he hadn't done that crazy thing and then sent that being into the world on its own, this would never have happened. So this is entirely Nandor's fault. But also, there's a part of me that is yeah, but this man decided to cheat with his own clone. And if he is the type of person that would do that, maybe it is better that you not be with him, Guillermo. It's just a tough thing to say because that's such an unusual and impossible to compare situation that I don't really even know what to think, But I was not expecting it to wrap up this way. I did think that we were just going to have this joke about how he's self-involved enough to be more interested in talking to his clone than Guillermo, but I didn't think it was going to progress to heartbreak and Guillermo finding this out the way that he does. And I am just so sad because I know the whole thing with the show has been, what if vampires were losers? And our vampire crew in this is just, they never win at anything. But I keep hoping that somehow Guillermo will be the exception and he will be able to win. And I don't know why I expect that at all, because that's the whole point, is that he isn't a winner either. And that's why he's hanging out with these vampires, is because they're all toxic losers who don't have better options. So I keep sort of getting my hopes up for him. At least in this episode, he stands up for himself. And that's a victory, even if he doesn't get to hold on to his boyfriend. So in that respect, I am willing to kind of be you know what? That was growth for you. And that combined with the fact that he's embezzling, that's some forward movement. But, the next episode is the finale of the season, and I do not know what to expect at all for that. So I'm going to be really curious. What are we going to... How does this season wrap for Guillermo? It's been such a weird season. And it's been sort of all over the place with him, like, you know, the embezzling, but he's like keeping it secret, but seems not that concerned about being found out. And then this relationship is already over. So like a lot of seasons, there tends to be a sort of overarching plot going with Guillermo in the background. And, you know, when we wrap for the season, we find out whether he has failed or, you know, there's like a big moment with him that feels connected. And I just don't know this season what that's even going to be like. I have no predictions on that front. And I have to assume the club is going to like completely close next episode because it's in bad shape by the end of this one. And Nadja has not come up with another idea for like entertainment. So unless they pull something out or Evil Mabel has an idea, I do not know how that place is going to like get its legs back under it. Once you lose steam like that, it's sort of impossible to get it back, you know? But I also am talking about this in a very real life perspective, and that's not necessarily how they're going to approach it. So there's that. Ms. T in the chat, I found this too sad. Yeah, same. It's just, I think that the show has done such a good job of showing us how constantly sad Guillermo is, that to see the way he absolutely lights up around Freddie makes it so clear all of a sudden how much of a rough time he's had and how little we have seen of him that isn't depressed or angry or resentful or self-pitying or whatever. And it's just such a marked contrast that you're like, oh, perfect. It's like the sun coming out, you know, and to have it just squashed this way, it's just really mean. Anyway, all right, I'm going to wrap this one up. Thank you again so much for commissioning this show, Max. Really interested to see how the finale goes. And appreciate y'all listening. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.